I just want to show you my filming setup, because like, this is my setup. Hi, welcome back. I have been having in the past couple of months, I don't know what it is. We call it macumba. Somebody put the evil eye on me because there's no way. Got sick multiple times, had problems with my family, had problems with my university. It's raining non-stop. Thank you. And I read the worst book of the year. I am already going to say it because I am very confident that it cannot get any worse than this. Let's do it in order, shall we? For my first read of the month. This is going to get included into a vlog, so if you want my longer thoughts, you can keep an eye out for that. But I read Deep End by Ellie Hazelwood. I really liked it. Surprise! The ex-professional swimmer whose boyfriend is called Luca loved the book in which she is a diver and he is a swimmer and his name is Luke. Yeah. I did not give it a 5-star because it did not give that 5-star feeling. You know that feeling? I usually give her books 5 stars. Her feminist novella give me such a rush of like intense happiness. This gave me it, but also I felt like the gist of the story is she's a diver, she's recovering from an old injury and also from the fact that she has trauma related to that injury and she now is scared to do a specific dive. And he is a very, very, very good swimmer from Sweden. He's Swedish? Yeah. And they're both trying to get to the Olympics. He, at the start of the story, is a boyfriend to some other girl that the protagonist, kind of knows this other girl is in her team, but she doesn't really know her. They break up. There's no cheating. There's actually like a really, really funny like contract involved. And this talks about like light BDSM. A lot of people got very heated by the description. It was not BDSM enough, it was too light, it was too much. I thought it was a perfectly enjoyable way of discovering this kind of relationships. And a lot of people who were saying online, oh, this is too light, this is not what BDSM is. BDSM doesn't have to be like hard or heavy to be a BDSM. It's about the relationship between the two partners. So I give it 4.5 stars. It was very, very good. I really enjoyed it. I really do wish that the science aspect was discovered more, like explained more, because there was a little bit of a sciencey aspect and I was like, oh, my feminist novellas. They also reference like Dr. Olive, who is the protagonist of another book, and I was like, oh, my Olive! How do I explain this to you? How do I explain who Caroline Calloway is to you? If you don't know who the scammer of the year is, watch D'Angelo's Wallace videos on her. She's trying to rebrand her image as like quirky girl on the internet. No, she was a scammer. She also said some very, very incredible, terrible things about her ex-best friend. So I read Scammer by Caroline Calloway. Did I pay a dime for this book? No, got it secondhand. It would have been $65. I was like, no way. This is like the story of her life from her perspective. She scammed her way into Cambridge. Okay, she falsified her grades to get into Cambridge, and then she got a book deal for $100K and she never wrote the fucking book. Don't ask me why. She also got like, I think an Adderall addiction, a drug addiction. She's still blaming everybody else for her drug addiction, for what she did, how she thought about her ex-best friend, Natalie Beach, who wrote a book of essays in which some of the essays are about Caroline, which I think I loved Natalie's Beach collection of essays. I read it last year. Wonderful. She's a talented, amazing writer. Caroline Calloway, her book is so insincere. You know where you're talking to your friend and she's telling you, oh, I broke up with my boyfriend because he was such an awful piece of shit. And then that boyfriend comes to you and he's like, no, you should hear my side of the story. That's who Caroline Calloway is. It's the shitty boyfriend in this situation. Because so many things that she says in her book are factually wrong. You know how I know this? Because I'm Italian, okay? Born and raised, I live here, okay? And she at one point goes to Italy. And either she got scammed, like the scammer got scammed, or she's lying. Because titles like prince, duke, princess, etc. are not a thing since 48. You can be a cavalier, yeah, sure, but dukes especially are not a title anymore since 1948. And she says, oh yeah, I met a Venetian duke and we went on a grand tour of the Grand Canal. Which rubbed me the wrong way. I'm Venetian, so do not talk about my city like that. But also, there's no such a thing as a Venetian duke, so either somebody very, very rich scammed you, Carolyn, or I don't know, you're just lying. She's also like allergic to similes, proper grammar, proper punctuation, so it was not a good experience. And then I was like, I need something really, really fun. And I read the third book in one of my favorite French series. It's called Les Tribulations d'Esther Parmentier. This third book, called Crime Prémédité Vampire Recherché. I sometimes read like young adult books in French to keep up my French. This is a urban fantasy series about a very quirky young woman who discovered that she's a witch, but she's also like the worst witch that the magical world has ever seen. She has a magical index, which is a number that defines how powerful you are, and she has a 3. Nobody scores below a 10. Usually. And she becomes a private investigator for a government agency to research like supernatural crimes. So fun. The romance, she falls in love with another private investigator who is a vampire, and he is so snarky and I love him. I love them together. I'm so sad that this series has ended, but it was such a fun experience. I give it 4 stars. Yes. And then I was sad. And you know what Alice does when Alice is sad? She reads awful audiobooks. I have a subscription to Storytel, and they provide wonderful audiobooks, but also some indie Omegaverse bullshit. So I read Dragon's Heat, #1 in City of Dragons. I give it 2.5 stars. Because I mean, it was fun. It was fun because it was queer. It was about these 2 dragon shifters falling in love with each other, but not actually because they were mates, so they just like instant love, highlighting the instant part. I would have given it 3 stars, but there's like some very weird anti-European sentiment in it. The whole section of the book is dedicated to the fact that Europe is having a monetary crisis. Yes, the whole country of Europe. They have to relocate some businesses in America and they cannot trust the Europeans. And I was like, what? But it was fun. Completely devoid of any character development, but it was fun. I went to Turin to visit my boyfriend because we're long distance, and I really, really wanted a book because you know me, I love books about chess. It's one of my special interests. I love books that talk about chess. I especially loved his book about chess, you know, Checkmate. And I discovered there was a book about chess that I hadn't read, so I hunted it down. This is Chess Novella by Stefan Zweig, La novella degli scacchi in Italian. Look at this wonderful edition. It's such a short novella, and yet it's such a wonderful novella. I usually don't really like short stories nor novellas because I think it lacks, usually, if you're not a really, really talented writer, you shouldn't be writing short stories because they're hard as fuck. Stefan Zweig uses chess as a metaphor for war because this is set in 1942, and it talks about a chess grandmaster, and it talks about the horrors of war and torture through chess. And it's such a wonderful novella. It also talks about obsession. I loved it. I loved it so much. I gave it 4 stars. Oh, do I have it somewhere? I don't really care. I read The Seep. You know when it's clear that a book came out from like a creative writing thesis? Like, you can tell when somebody goes to a creative writing like masterclass or PhD, etc., and they have to write a thesis at the end of the program and then they turn it into a book. It never works. It never works, okay? The Seep was a collection of wonderful, beautiful scenes surrounded by nothingness, like pure nothingness. The Seep talks about an alien invasion, but not really. It talks about people after an alien invasion. These aliens are so tiny and microscopic that we drink them and breathe them. And they can transform our body into whatever we want. So they transform the earth into a utopia, like a true utopia. We don't have money, we don't have capitalism anymore. You can do whatever you want. There's no sickness, etc. It doesn't really dwell in the fact that this sounds like hell on earth, but that's okay. And it talks about this woman whose wife leaves her because she wants to relive her childhood. So she's like, well, I can do whatever I want with my body. I want to be born again. And so she's like, I want to kill my old body because she's 50 and I want to be born again. So goodbye, your wife of 50 years will now be an infant. And the protagonist is like, well, you're not going to be my wife anymore because like all your memories are going to be erased. And she goes on a journey of self-discovery through this very, very weird world. And there are so many interesting concepts that are written down and never explored. And I was like, why? Because it was a creative writing thesis. It's clear that that's all that it is. There was another short stories attached to my edition from another point of view, like the same story from another point of view. And I think it was interesting, like it adds almost nothing. So I give it 3 stars. This is once again in another video, but I reread The Sunshine Court, the 4th book in All for the Game. I am not going to talk about this book. I have a whole reading blog for that book. This was in preparation for The Golden Raven, 5th book in the All for the Game series. When I said that I wanted more exe games in the story, no, that was not what I intended. I wanted some fun exe games. I did not want more trauma. Yes, thank you. I cannot say anything about this series aside from, God damn it. I liked book 2 a little bit better from book 1. The Sunshine Court was a 4 stars because it was like the first stepping stone in preparation for something. And then The Golden Raven, I gave it 4.25 stars. I liked it a little bit better. It's a little bit more aimless than the original series, but it's supposed to be. It's more of a character study, even more so than the All for the Game original trilogy. I really like the characters. And I love how, even though we are getting the POV for some of the characters, you know nothing about them when they don't want you to know something. Like there's a pathological liar in some of those POVs and you like know nothing about them. They repress anything, even in their own narrative, and it's so smart. Loved it. Well, I mean, I experienced such amount of trauma. I should really go back to my shifter romance. Yes. I grabbed Team a.l.p.h.a. Yeah, Team Alpha. Yeah. 1.25 stars. This was very short. Also very fucking stupid. You have 2 POVs. One is the main protagonist who gets kidnapped and tortured. So his POV is like hell, literal hell, torture, manipulation, everything that you can imagine in the word trauma, it's there. And then you have the second POV with the mercenary that the father of the first protagonist pays to save the first protagonist, and he's like la la la, everything's fine, life is good, rainbows. And you're like, it was such an emotional whiplash because these people were so fucking stupid. There was also a chunk of the book that was so compacted, like so full of Americanisms. Like it was like hearing 2 frat boys speaking to each other, but they're like not listening to each other, just like talking at each other. And I was like, am I having a stroke? Is this English? This is odding. This could not be English. 1.25 stars. Then I read Sunrise on the Reaping. Yes, I read it the day it came out with my friends, and we were all like talking and discussing what was going to happen. I know this is going to be an unpopular opinion. This is the second best in my like top 10 of the books of the Hunger Games. It's the first one, Hunger Games book 1, and then Sunrise on the Reaping. I think the comparisons between Katniss' first game and Haymitch's, it's so interesting and so well done. So much more brutal, so rougher. Like, you can clearly see that in the span of time between Haymitch and Katniss, the game got so much more refined, but also easier to break, in the fact that they are not torturing their contestant anymore in the same way that Haymitch got. It was such, I think, an intelligent book, especially published today. It was very needed. I gave it 4.5 stars. I then read a wonderful book about, is there a word for pendolarismo in English? Like the commuters, the chronic commuters. This book was called Filosofia minima del pendolare, which is roughly translates to minimum philosophy of the commuter. I love that book because I am a chronic commuter. I commute almost every day to work, to university, to my house. What is the lighting doing? Am I being blessed by Jesus Christ? If not, why? Ignore them. Just listen to the sound of my voice. Such a lovely book. The author describes himself as a third party, and he calls himself the spectator, and he recounts all... What is happening? Let's change. Here's my book. The author talks about the 40 years of commuting that he was used to do when he would go from Sweden and Denmark down to Italy because his girlfriend lived there, and it was such a wonderful book. I felt so seen. There are so many struggles that the Italian government and governments in general do not see in commuters. Let's go back to having the book there. I gave it 4 stars. Wonderful. I loved it. Oh yeah. And then me and my friends were like, what if we read House of Leaves together? I did a blog in which I read House of Leaves. There's an entire book, so I'm going to link it up here. What an experience. I have the physical copy somewhere. I think I lent it to my mom. This was a doozy. This is a book that talks about a book that talks about a movie that does not exist, about a house that is bigger in the inside and it's growing. And it's such a suffocating read. The text goes down, sideways. You need a mirror to read some of it, and you need a decoder. You need to know French and German, because there are some passages in other languages and the translation is not correct. Sometimes the translation is not correct on purpose, and you're like, oh my god, is everybody lying to me? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes. I love the experience. This is my first ergodic book, I think they're called like that, in which the book uses text in an innovative way, uses text as images, has codes, etc. And thus developed my obsession, because I really liked House of Leaves. Gave it 4.25 stars. And so I was like, I need more. And so I read the Rorschach texts, which has pages like these. Much less confusing than House of Leaves. This does not have any codes in it to decipher, just has a very wacky plot. The protagonist wakes up and he has no memories of his past life. He only knows that his fiancée has died and he's very, very depressed. And there are sharks. Sharks made of words and thought and connections. This is all I'm going to say, because everything else is a spoiler, because you develop a relationship with the main character as you read, and it's such a wonder. It was so well done, so well written, while being a bit of an older book. It does not contain misogyny, which I was expecting. It was very, very romantic and melancholic. I loved it a lot. That ending, a little bit devastating, but I loved it. Give it 4 stars. And I was like, there's another ergodic book that I have in physical form. Not here. Once again, I lent it to my mom, but it can only be read while in physical form, and it's The Ship of Theseus by J.J. Abrams. And this has some pages like this. This is a book, and then you read the story of the book, and then you have the annotations of 2 students talking to each other in the margins, discovering about secret societies that the author of this presumed book, The Ship of Theseus, was a part of. It was wonderful. At the beginning, I was like, oh my god, one of the two students is an incel. No, he grows, and he grew on me, and I really, really liked it. That one contained codes that I had to look up on the internet because I am not well versed in decoding, especially when the book gives you a wheel to decode, and I never used it, and I was like, what's the wheel for? And everybody on the internet was like, what's the wheel for, J.J. Abrams? What's the wheel for? I still don't know. What's the fucking wheel for? Undetermined. Loved it. 4 stars. And after all of that, I was like, I need to decompress. I read the entirety of the webtoon Bongchon Bride by a.l.p.h.a. It was an historical webtoon about the essentially a slave of a very rich household. He is the bastard child of a very rich man, but he gets sold as a slave, and then he gets sold again to this mysterious man that lives on the mountains. Everybody thinks that he's a murderer. He's just like very tall, very big, very strong, and he is such a kind creature. He is a very kind man. He lives on the mountains alone with his mother, and he provides for her, and they fall in love. Yeah. Heavy trigger warning for sexual assault and eventual rape because it delves into very dark topics. I liked it. I don't know if I really liked it. I think I liked it just fine. I think the relationship was a little bit rushed, and there were too many sex scenes. Okay, as is Mutt enjoyer, I sometimes love me some erotica. Okay, there were too many sex scenes. I wanted to get to the plot, and I was like, why do you keep boning so much? Please stop having sex so much. It was explained in the story why, like the hypersexualism, it was a coping mechanism, but I was like, please go on with the story. I still liked it, gave it 4 stars. It ended very well. It was a very, very sweet ending. Last 3 books. First one is Dancer from the Dance. This is an historical book at this point. It was written in the 70s. The author, Andrew Holleran, talks about his friends, and he talks about the gays who would go to Fire Island to dance all night, all day. The dance, the music was their way of life. He especially talks about 2 of his friends. One was Malone, this beautiful man that everybody thought was like the peak of beauty, and he was one of the last romantics. He wanted to find love so desperately that he does not understand that he's actually in love with the city of New York, not with any man that he sleeps with. And this drag queen called Sutherland, who does all the drugs, goes to all the parties, knows everybody, like the quintessential drag queen, and their relationship. A very, very melancholic book, but so beautiful. Like the writing was at some points so beautiful that I was like, you're describing something very raunchy. Like at one point they were talking about how having a small dick was worse than leprosy in the 70s in the gay community, and it was describing such a flowery writing, but like flowery done well. And I was like, why is the writing so beautiful when you're talking about dick? And you talk about dick so much, but it was beautiful. I give it 4.25 stars. I then read, and it's going to be in another vlog that is going to come out somewhere in the future. I read The Conditions of Will, the new Jessa Hastings book. I'm not going to say like much of my deeper thoughts because it's going to be in a vlog, but like, loved it. Jessa Hastings laces her writing with, I'm not going to say cocaine this time because we're talking about addicts, but like, very sad book at times, but very, very funny. How the events played out could have been done a little bit better. Like I think it should have been structured differently to have a bigger impact on me. Still gave it 4 stars. It still was very good, but I think some little tweaking could have gotten it to 5 stars because it was very good. And then you waited until the end to know the worst book that I've read. Possibly, certainly the worst book of 2025. I read Heavenly Tyrant, the second book in the Iron Widow, now a trilogy. It was supposed to be a duology, but it's now a trilogy, at least, says the author. I wrote a lengthy review for this book, but I think it basically missed in every single aspect of a book. And in the words of the great Bob the Drag Queens, Mama, that was garbage. That was fucking garbage. To keep it simple, the plot, nonsensical, goes in 100 different directions and nowhere at the same time. The writing, the quality dropped so much. I know that this book had a difficult time getting out in the public because of the publishing house did not pay the author, Zhao, but did the editors get paid? Because they were not paid enough to read. Like, were they paid enough? Because this piece of work, no. The similes, the metaphors were all wrong. There was some beautiful writing in the first book that here completely gone. The political intrigue especially got me heated because I think either the writing was so bad that the point did not get across, or the author misinterpreted what the following things are. Socialism, communism, Mao's communism, which is different from our Western communism, by the way. What a revolution is, who Robespierre is, and what modern feminism requires, because we are stuck, and this is the central theme of the book, we are stuck with 90s War of the Sexes feminism. It's tired, it's old, it gets us back 50 years. We have overcome War of the Sexes. Please see that your protagonist brings forward a narrative that is so harmful to actual human beings, not just women, actual human beings. I was so frustrated, and the author retcons the events of her first book. In the second book, she thinks back of the events of the first book, saying, well, I did so many bad things, but actually it turned out that I was right, because so many more people would have died if I hadn't done those terrible things. So I was justified. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then she recounts the events of the first book, lying. So many things that were fresh in my mind by Iron Witha. I was like, those were not the words. Those were not the words that you wrote in first book. The main selling point of the story, the polyamory relationship, is not present at all in the second book. Fuck yayyyyy, fuck Shimin. We are going to have this new character, the Emperor, who could have been so much cooler. The ending is so stupid. It's so incredibly stupid. I just wanted to scream. And also, Zhao, please note that gravity gets weaker when you go up. This is the last thing that I'm going to say. 1 star. If I could give it 0 star, I would. The complete disaster of a book. It should have been a duology. It should have been that long. It was stupid. It brings forward a narrative that is so wrong in so many ways. I cannot even describe it. Please, if you were interested, go read the longer review that I wrote on Goodreads. And on this pleasant note, these are all the books that I've read in the past couple of months. I've had my ups and downs, and I'm still happy with my reads. I've had a lot of 4 stars. I still haven't found another 5 stars, but that's alright. I'm still in search for it. This video is over. This was a long one. I have some socials if you want to connect with me. They're down below, and I'll see you next time. Mwah!